Welcome, Dawson. We'd like to welcome you on behalf of EFTAP, which is EFT Australasian Practitioners. And we have Dr. Linda Wilson with us, who is the Secretary of EFTAP, and this year I'm the President. And what we wanted to create for our members was introducing them to well-known EFT people in the world who perhaps we don't get to see the real person behind their work. And, you know, to have this as more of an informal chat, as well as, you know, what you're up to, what's happening in your life, how you got started, all that sort of thing, and where you see EFT going in the future, rather than what people might hear from you on a professional interview about EFT. So this is more about you, the person, and your life, and how EFT has fitted into that for you, and where you see EFT going in the future. So
sounds like fun, Jenny. I'm honored to be here. Thank you for including me. Appreciate that.
You're the first one. It's like you're the go-to person.
We've started with a bang, Dawson.
I have to set the standard over here.
Yes.
The pressure's on.
Lucky you've got big shoulders to hold on that pressure. Exactly. So obviously you're the founder and the head of EFT Universe, and I'm an EFT Universe trainer. And we met through the work that I was doing and you were doing with veterans, and the research with PTSD for veterans back in 2009. And I think I actually emailed Gary Craig, and he said, he put me onto you because he said, you know, you're more involved with the veterans and the research, and that's how we got connected. So tell us a little bit about how you actually got started with EFT.
I ran into EFT for the first time in 2002 when a friend of mine who was a Gestalt therapist told me that he was treating people with PTSD, phobias, and other conditions with this new kind of therapy and seeing great results. And so my reaction was like that of so many people. I didn't believe it. I wish I could say I was an impartial, open-minded, receptive person to this statement, but I wasn't. I just said this is totally ridiculous. There's no way. First of all, there's no way that one therapy can work for sports performance, can work for public speaking anxiety, can work for phobias, can work for PTSD. You need specialized therapies for all of these things. So that right away didn't sound credible to me. So he gave me an information package on EFT, and I took it and I just threw it in a big slush pile of papers I had and gave it no further thought. So that was my unpromising beginning. And then one day I had this problem I was dealing with where I owned a small hotel at the time, and I was trying to sell this hotel, and it had gone into escrow, and then it had fallen out of escrow, and we had 2 or 3 deals collapse, and the newest deal was just collapsing for the sale of this hotel, and I was really anxious. And so I found that piece of paper, I tapped myself, and my anxiety level dropped immediately. So that made me think. And after that, I talked to him again. I wound up meeting Gary Craig, going to some of his workshops, then meeting the EFT masters, being intrigued by their work, also being very much in the whole world of energy healing. So I was friends with Donna Eden Energy Medicine. I had people who were studying with Barbara Brennan Energy Healing. A lot of friends who were certified in therapeutic touch or healing touch or Reiki, Joe Ray, other kinds of techniques. So I think this whole world has a huge amount to offer people. And I picked EFT to focus on for a few years because I felt as though with a huge number of people doing it already, it was a technique worth researching. So I got a research program going. I began to raise money, put together coalitions of research teams to get studies done. And I picked EFT because I had a large number of people using it, and we could leverage that influence. And I knew that once one energy therapy got accepted into mainstream medicine, that would open the door for many others. And I figured that EFT was the thin end of the wedge. And what we find happens is that people tap, they learn it's effective, and then they then say, gee, what else is out there? They then start to learn about other energy systems and about the whole idea that energy can have an enormous effect on healing. And so I feel as though my work with EFT kind of is something I chose to do consciously. I gave it a really hard shove to give it the momentum to get accepted by mainstream medicine, and now I don't need it to work that hard anymore. I no longer have to, have a bake sale to raise $2,000 to hire the statistician to design the study to get it done. There's all this research happening that I just advise on, and I don't have to play the same active role. So EFT is like a teenager. It's 22 years old now, wow. And young adult. It's on its own 2 feet. It's gone through graduate school. It's paying its bills, and I've more and more felt free to step away and then do other things that I think are going to be part of the bigger picture. So that's been kind of the trajectory for me with EFT. So it's a wonderful starter technique, starter technology, and hopefully it'll lead people who dabble in it to look at the whole world of energy healing and the power of energy to heal, because that's where it's at. I mean, energy can heal, and if we're going to take an approach to healing, if you have to make a choice between working at the level of matter, molecules, cells, atoms, and at the level of energy, fields, and the fields that surround human beings and cells and animals and the planet, the evidence stacking up that energy heals matter is so powerful that I want people to realize, hey, sure, there's a lot that material medicine, material healing has to offer. If I've got a broken bone, get it set. If I have a bacterial infection, get antibiotics. But for many kinds of healing, especially the ones we need nowadays, like stress, like autoimmune diseases, energy has a huge amount to offer people. I want to make them aware of that by the various things I do. So that's kind of where I came from in terms of EFT, and also where I'm heading.
Yeah, fantastic. Linda, do you have a question for Dawson?
I do. So Dawson, my question is in relation to exactly what you've just said. I have this incredible vision and hope and desire for the future that actually healing is going to be it's going to be light that does healing. It's going to be sound that does healing. It's going to be working with those different frequencies that actually creates healing. Is that something that you're seeing expand and open up with the research and the work that you're doing?
I think people who are aware of it are using those techniques, and there are many more, of course, for whom they're totally off the radar. I was talking to a surgeon friend of mine this week, and he was completely unaware of the whole realm of energy healing. I also was writing the introduction to a friend's book recently, and she was diagnosed with breast cancer that had metastasized to her lymph nodes and possibly to other parts of her body as well. And she just focused on healing her body. She did qigong, she did tapping, she got energy work, she did a lot of different energy techniques, and gradually the mass in her breast diminished in size. Her lymph nodes began to clear up, and 3 months later she was cancer free. There are so many stories of people, even with serious diseases, that echo the importance and the value of this. And so there's a big divide. My surgeon friend in medical school, he never heard or read any of this stuff. He still thinks in terms of material level healing. Some people are really aware of the potential of energy to heal and are making enormous strides in making that a reality. So what I want to see happen is I want to see doctors and nurses and physician assistants, people in primary care, at least aware this is a possibility. When you walk into the doctor's office, say for physical pain, why not get an app on your smartphone, and while you're waiting to see the doctor or the nurse, the app would tell you how to tap for pain. Research shows us if you do that, your pain will diminish on average about 2/3. So when you go to see the doctor, they won't be medicalizing the part that's emotional. And so you'll be getting appropriate care for the appropriate parts of your pain. You'll be taking care of the emotional part with tapping. You'll be getting medical care for the part that's truly organic, that is a disease or a imbalance in your body. So it's worth making sure that healing professionals are aware of this and the power of energy to heal. It's just phenomenal how much potential there is there. And I'd like to see it moving into primary care more and more in the next few years.
Yeah, it's such a fantastic opportunity for us to keep on introducing it to people. And momentum, that's what it's all about. Beautiful.
I like how also a lot of the scientists like Greg Braden and Joe Dispenza and, you know, people that are into science and research are connecting with spirituality as well as energy, and that you know, spontaneous remission happens. Not like your friend in 3 months, that can happen immediately through meditation and through healing, through sound, through so many different things. And I love how the research is going into all of these areas. And there's in fact something happening in June in Vancouver Island with Greg Braden, Joe Dispenza, Lynn Taggart and Lee Carroll, who channels Cryon, and it's called Science Meets Spirituality. And I love how this is all coming together with people to create healing on such a deeper level, energetically, spiritually.
You know, spirituality always used to be regarded, if you go back to medieval times or ancient history, Greek and Roman history, and earlier, spirituality was always regarded as something that was apart from the material world. So if you were a holy person, or what the Catholics call religious, you would then be in a monastery or a cloister. The early church fathers, the desert fathers, the holy fathers went into the mountains, lived in caves. In Tibet, they went and lived on mountaintops and went through ascetic rites to purge the body, and the body was regarded as this not evil, but definitely something that was of a much lower order than spirituality. So throughout human history, there's been this enormous divide between spirituality and the material world, and we're now finding that bridge is being healed. Also, if you look at the huge controversies that occurred in the 19th century when the theory of evolution was first gaining traction and Charles Darwin published The Origin of Species, you had the religious people, you had the church people lining up and saying, God created man in his own image and God made the world in 7 days. You know, then you had the evolutionists saying, well, no, we can prove some of these dinosaurs are millions of years old. And this huge split that happened then between religion and science, and now all of these things are coming together. We see that people, for example, polls of scientists show that a majority of scientists have a sense of an invisible hand and a benevolent universe. All of the founders of quantum physics, Erwin Schrödinger, I have a new book coming out called Mind to Matter, and the subtitle is the astonishing science of how your brain creates material reality. It turns out that Einstein believed in a great invisible force in the universe. Schrödinger, all of these key people, Niels Bohr, they all those pioneers in quantum physics had the sense of the workings of the universe being far more than just random chance. So we see that happening in the world of science, and then we see spirituality, things like energy work coming into the consulting room. EFT, using acupuncture and energy flows and energy meridians, be used to treat PTSD in people who are terribly traumatized, like Rwandan refugees and Vietnam veterans and others. And so this amazing confluence where those practices aren't on a mountaintop in the Himalayas anymore. They aren't in the cloister. They're coming into the consulting room. They're coming to the refugee camps to treat the most traumatized people in the world, and they're being effective. So I just love this. And I see I experience no split at all between science and spirituality. I see the two as totally interwoven. And anytime you think there's a split or conflict, you just haven't looked deeply enough. We haven't yet delved deep enough to find the underlying unity in them. So yeah, it's wonderful to see these threads all coming together and being part of the modern psyche.
And Dawson, we could talk about this for hours, clearly, but I want to bring it back to maybe how it is that what is your daily ritual that you use to keep yourself well, energized, positive? I know there's been a lot going on in your world and changes for you and your family. So what do you do to actually keep yourself motivated and moving forward?
Particularly, I think, in light of, the recent fire, like if you give us an explanation about what occurred for you there and how you've created yourself since then using your daily technique.
Well, I answer both things in the same with the same story, and that is that the fire caught us totally unprepared, and so my wife and I woke up at about 12:45, a little after midnight, and she woke up first, woke me up. I looked outside, I saw this glow on the ridge. We have this beautiful property which overlooks a valley, and then there's a ridge line, and I saw this glow of the ridge line, and I knew that it was serious. So I began to just wake up and just move into coping mode, and I walked outside our bedroom to actually look at what was going on there. And just between that first glance out the window to standing outside the house, the fire had crested the ridge and was racing down the valley below to our home. And I just said to my wife, I didn't scream or yell, but we're not really drama queens. She often says that we just don't do drama. Neither of us we just aren't people who are into drama. But I said loudly, we're getting out of here right now. And because I said it so loudly, she just startled and back into her body, and we literally grabbed. We made these split-second decisions. I realized I had time to put on either socks or shoes, but not both. So I grabbed shoes, no socks. I grabbed the car keys. I grabbed my cell phone and my laptop, and in her hand, we just sprinted toward our car, which was quite some distance away. And as we reached the car, the fire was just shooting up, and there was this huge burst of flame right behind the house as it was about to consume the building that contains the EFT Universe office. And so we jumped in the car. There was smoke and everywhere in the air. There was cinders flying, smacking against the side of the car. It was like a snowstorm, but of particles of fire. And so we drove out. I just hit the accelerator. We drove out at high speed down our own driveway and tore out into the road. And my wife felt heat on her head, and she looked up, and all the trees above her head were on fire. And we drove about 3 miles away, we actually went to the home of my ex-wife, who lives 3 miles away, and to wake her up, and her family and her husband. And turned out they weren't there, but we then woke the neighbors in their neighborhood who were still sleeping, and told them there's a fire on the way. So they all had then a lot of time to get out. And they didn't have the same kind of panic. They were able to get their pets out. All my pets died. But other people were able to get their pets out, get their possessions together, and get their valuables out of their homes, and so on. So it was one of those shattering experiences, and we were very disoriented for the next while. We went to stay with friends for the rest of that night. who were quite some distance away. Then they were evacuated, and we went to a hotel. But after that following night, we woke up, and I said to my wife, "We must do one thing right now, and that's meditate." And as we meditated, we closed our eyes, meditated, we did a little bit of tapping first, and as we meditated, we felt ourselves literally click back into our bodies, and suddenly we were aligned again. And so that's the crucial thing to do every day, is to move into alignment with who you are, move into alignment between the immaterial part of yourself, the part of yourself that's non-local, what Larry Dossey calls non-local mind, and local mind. And so when you're functioning as a local mind with all the resources of non-local mind, you have a very different life than if you're relying on only your local mind. And so our ritual every day is to wake up. I wake up in the morning, I walk to the coffee maker and turn it on.
Very important.
Have a cup of really wonderful, rich, dark roast coffee, and then meditate. And I can feel myself, all the swirling thoughts of the night and dreams and worries about the day and what I have to do and my to-do list and all this stuff just falls away. And then you feel yourself click in, you come into alignment. And from that place, you're empowered, you're wise, you're inspired, you're stable, you're centered. Like right now, I have this one project to do. It's just a massive project, and it's going to take it's about a 60-hour project that I have to do, and I've just been like dreading it and not knowing how I can ever find the time to do it. And so I tuned into that place of being one with the universe a few days ago and said, what do I do? And the universe said, why don't you treat that project as much of an excuse to get into alignment as you treated writing Mind to Matter, the book. The project actually is getting permission for all the illustrations. There are about 150 illustrations in the book, and I have to get permission from each one, and from the copyright holders. And so the universe that wisdom was, just as you moved into alignment each day before you wrote any part of the book, that was your practice every day, now move into alignment and then ask for permission from people, and remove all of the strain and stress from the process and be in that same place of alignment. So you find there are these pieces of universal wisdom that come to you. You act from non-local mind, and then miraculous things just happen. And I suspect that whole huge project will be much easier. So I strongly endorse meditation. EFT is triage. EFT is your 2-minute technique to use to center yourself when you've been knocked off course by the events of the day or by the stress of your life. Meditation is the foundation. Meditation is the thing to do every single morning to orient yourself to non-local mind. So you're living as a local node of non-local mind, and you're immersed in the thoughts, the picture, the perspectives, the wisdom of that non-local perspective. And what I talk about in this new book, Mind to Matter, is that when you're in alignment with non-local mind, you're automatically in alignment with every other mind that is in alignment with non-local mind throughout the universe. And so suddenly you aren't alone. You aren't lonely. You aren't alone. You have no sense of being an isolated individual. Suddenly you're part of this huge, great universal dance. And that perspective, living life that way, that just changes everything. So the routine I recommend people have at the very, very least is meditation in the morning and possibly in the evening as well, and then tapping to release stress. And there are, of course, many other things: good nutrition, exercise, fresh air, time in nature, high quality relationships, superfoods. There are many other things you can do, but those two things are the foundation, I believe, of a happy life.
Fantastic. I like how you talk about the mind, the greater mind being the non-local mind. And, that's something that I bring in with the quantum EFTs when we're connecting with our guides and higher self, and we're looking at a traumatic experience, but we're looking at things from a soul perspective and connecting with the higher master guides and the oversoul, and then looking at what is the actual higher learning that my soul set up for myself by creating this experience. So you get taken out of the actual, once you've done the triage, as you say, you know, the clinical EFT part, it's then getting into that part that is higher and above yourself. That is, well, why did I create this? Why did my soul create this for myself? What is the higher learning and the soul learning from this? And then getting into a higher space like meditation and asking for those messages of the higher learning, and then bringing that higher learning back down into the physical. And then, like, how can I be now that I have this higher learning, and applying it? So it's great that we can bring all of that in to combine it with EFT as well.
Mm. I think that's one of the real powers of tapping an EFT, is that it works so beautifully with almost every other modality, almost every other healing experience. It can be put in there and helps to really cement that into our system, and you know, can only contribute to what happens next.
Well, stress, no matter how centered we are, will pull us off course. And so many of us have plenty of moments when we feel at peace with the universe. We may go for a walk in nature. We may go for a hike. We might go surfing. We might see a beautiful sunset. And so now have that feeling of being in tune. But then stuff happens, and we need a technique that'll quickly bring us back into a healthy homeostasis. And EFT, I think, is simply the most powerful one. It combines so many things like breathing and acupuncture meridian tapping. It includes facing the bad stuff. So it isn't about positive thinking or saying, I will accept myself once I solve this problem. It's saying, this problem is here. It's real, and I love myself with or without the problem. You know, I may solve this problem. I may never solve this problem. I have this pain now. I may always have this pain. This pain might get worse, and I still, regardless of any of that, love and accept myself. That is such a powerful formula to bring to our issues. And as Carl Rogers said, the paradox of change is that when you accept yourself the way you are, that's when you start to change. So I think it's really an essential technique, but it's also really important to support your health and happiness and well-being in all those other ways as well. Make sure you have a healthy body, making sure that your metabolism is working well. I've been reading a lot about mitochondria, which are the energy centers of our cells, and some of the neurons in our brain have over 200,000 mitochondria, these little energy factories in our bodies. If they aren't working properly in those neurons, we don't have enough power in our brains to work efficiently. If they aren't working properly in our bodies, our metabolisms don't work efficiently. So you have health in all those ways as well. And then if you can release your stress, then you can enjoy a healthy body, then you create healthy relationships, and then you start to really have a sense of loving your life and loving being here. And when people come to our workshops, I know Jenny has the same experience. I'm sure I talk for her as well. When people come to our workshops and they share their problems with us, I'm just like, I want to cry sometimes that people are suffering so much. And a lot of it is totally unnecessary. They're living out life scripts that were given to them by their parents or grandparents or 10 generations back, and their families, their environments. It's not them. They just inherited all this garbage from their childhood and other places. And so it's so vital to let that go and claim a healthy life. When you let the stuff go, you realize it was just an illusion. It wasn't really any part of me. It was just this thing I got dumped on me as a child. When people drop that and gain emotional freedom, then they can claim their full potential. And that's really what we're all about, is teaching people to let go of those barriers that inhibit their potential, to allow them to say, hey, I'm a capable person. I deserve a wonderful life. I'm going to step into that life I know I deserve. And it's just such a privilege to train people and see them doing that.
And Dawson, in this reality, people are often looking for research before they allow themselves to have the experience. So I'm wondering, I know that EFT Universe has done an incredible job to collate a lot of the research that's out there. Is that something that will continue to happen? And can you just tell people who perhaps haven't heard or seen that resource how they can get a hold of it?
Sure. You just find the research bibliography, and we're the only place there is a comprehensive research bibliography, because there are so many studies now that it's just actually hard to keep track of them all. So we make sure we do that, and that is just accessible at research.eftuniverse.com. So just the website, eftuniverse.com, but in front of that you put the word research dot. So research.eftuniverse.com, and then we divide the research into relevant topics: anxiety, depression, PTSD, weight loss, sports performance, and so on, so people can find what they want quickly. And that's a really good resource. And yeah, we'll keep updating that, because again, it just has we just become the default place people go to find the research. And you're right, many people need to see research before they'll believe something is true. And so the research has really been a cornerstone of EFT success. And then what's happening now is other schools are doing more research as well. Reiki is doing much more research. Healing Touch is doing more research. All of these different other techniques are now following that trail we blazed and validating their techniques as well.
Awesome.
Yeah, very exciting times.
Yeah, I love how people like Dr. Peter Stapleton, who is in Australia, is able to do that and create the research that we have here in Australia. So we'll be interviewing Peter as well.
Yeah, I've worked with her on several projects, and she is not only is she incredibly bright mind, she's also a truly wonderful human being, and it's a treat to see those come together.
Yeah,
it is.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So,
Dawson, I was going to ask you, oh sorry, Jenny, go for it.
I was just asking, when is your book coming out, Dawson?
The publication date is June 12th, and a lot of the book, the first half of the book, is about thoughts to things, mind to matter, on a small scale: molecules, cells, atoms. So there are studies, for example, showing that when we induce certain, as we think, as we change our brain state, when we meditate especially, and now with Joe Dispenza, Joe's hooked up over 10,000 people to EEG machines, and we've measured what happens to their brains when they meditate. I've hooked up people, we now have Peter doing MRI research. We know that when you meditate, when you enter an unstressed state, that changes happening in your brain. What I'm mapping in the first part of the book is what that's doing to your body. And it turns out that those changes that happen in your brain are triggering different frequencies, especially some very slow frequencies, delta and theta waves, and some very fast frequencies, gamma waves. One study, for example, found that gamma, the frequency of gamma, a very, very fast wave, 40 cycles per second, can, in a mouse study, the researchers found, they were looking at mice that are genetically engineered to be prone to Alzheimer's disease. And in Alzheimer's, the brain gets full of this like tarry stuff called amyloid plaques, beta amyloid plaques. And once the brain has been all gunked up with all these beta amyloid plaques, the neural impulses can't fire through it. People develop Alzheimer's, and of course then their basic functions start to shut down. In this study, this is one of about 400 studies I talk about in the book. In this one study, though, the researchers passed gamma through the brains of these mice who, again, had fairly advanced Alzheimer's. They found that in an hour of gamma, half of the amyloid plaques were removed from the brains of those mice. In 1 hour of gamma, 50% of the beta amyloid plaques in those Alzheimer's mice went away. I mean, that's some of the effects energy has on matter, and that's not one study. I've got 400 of these things in this new book. So the whole first part of the book is all about molecules, atoms, how it's affecting molecules around us, and the second half of the book is all about how it's affecting large scale, social scale, and planetary scale changes. And there are these massive fields called geomagnetic fields which surround the Earth. And essentially the Earth's a giant magnet, North Pole, South Pole. We use a compass, we can see there's a North Pole and South Pole. There are these magnetic lines of force around the Earth. But it turns out that these lines of force are measurable. Scientists have been measuring them now for almost a century, and we know what the frequencies are of these. And it turns out that the frequencies most common in the Earth's magnetosphere are the same 6 frequencies that dominate in the human brain. So when we're in tune with that universe, when we're in tune with non-local mind, we're actually in tune with these frequencies on this planetary scale. And this research is stunning. I just happened to stumble across a whole bunch of scientific pieces and put it all together. I had a lot of help from brilliant people like Roland McCraney at HeartMath, Rick Leskowitz at Harvard Medical School, Peter Stapleton, many people helped me figure all this stuff out. And the result, though, is in the second half of Mind to Matter, talking about the relationship of the individual to the non-local and how we can move into synchronicity and attunement with that non-local mind. So both at the level of cells and molecules and at the level of planets and galaxies, energy is having profound effects on matter. And so this is my new
It's
interesting.
so exciting. So exciting. It's really exciting. So Dawson, that suggests that practices like earthing and meditation, which you've already mentioned, that actually bring us back into connection with nature, are really going to play a huge part in the future of they've played a huge part in the past as well in terms of our health and well-being, but maybe we're rediscovering them with the, I guess the acceptable framework of research.
Yeah, earthing is basically walking barefoot on the ground, especially moist ground. So when you take a shower, you're earthing yourself. When you walk on wet grass barefoot, you're earthing. Take off your shoes, and just a little bit of moisture be there, and you're earthing. And when you do that, the Earth is full of electrons. Those electrons flood up through our body. They neutralize free radicals. They prevent aging. They do all kinds of things. So a lot of the book talks about anti-aging. And one of the interesting things about the book, books have a life of their own, and a lot of the case histories are about cancer. And I had no intention of it being about cancer when I began work, but I just found so much research on the effects of these energy therapies on cancer. I mentioned my friend who was able to reverse her metastatic breast cancer in 3 months with energy therapies, only energy therapy. She declined all conventional treatments. But there are studies, there are case reports published in peer-reviewed medical journals showing miraculous healings from cancer. People who had cancer 1 week and didn't have it the next week. One guy with a malignant brain tumor, and then his second brain scan, just a few weeks later, it was gone. People can heal really, really, really quickly with energy therapies, and it's remarkable the potential of these kinds of practices. Earthing's one, and there's a whole long list of them I give in the book, but time with nature is another. Quality human relationships. I was with my wife in a store yesterday, and we were just buying a piece of furniture, and the woman said, who was helping us for like an hour, said, "Wow, I love watching the two of you together." And she was just like really getting high on just watching two people being nice to each other. It's like, well, that should not be that strange to see two married people being kind to each other. That quality relationships has a huge effect. If you've been in a bad relationship with somebody who's being mean or nasty to you, inconsiderate or disrespectful, you'll know it has a serious degrading effect on your health and your performance. So quality relationships, time in nature, breathing, just the quality of our breathing deeply, centering ourselves, relaxing our bodies consciously, invoking energy flow. Qigong, I think Qigong is phenomenal. Tai Chi, those oriental practices to stimulate energy flows through our body are powerful. Times of connection with pets, if you like pets, if you like, horses, cats, dogs, parrots, whatever it might be, goldfish. Spend that time with them. That's nurturing. So all of these ways of loving ourselves, nurturing ourselves are so powerful. EFT has a role to play in all of these. But if you're eating well, if you're getting enough movement, if you're exercising adequately, if you're grounding yourself, if you're centering yourself in your body, if you're breathing, if you're nourishing your well-being in all these ways, you'll have a much better life. You also have a much longer life. Research, just like one study showed that optimists live 8 years longer than pessimists. 8 years. I mean, that's a lot of time. They're also way healthier. One piece of research published about 4 years ago showed that people who have a positive explanatory framework, what goes on. So they, the weather is cold and rainy, and they say, oh, well, it'll be sunny tomorrow. They just have a positive way of seeing the world regardless of it, rather than the person who has a negative one who says, another lousy day. Well, turns out that they're much more prone to certain diseases. People who are pessimistic, they're more prone to respiratory disease, their immune systems are depressed, they're more prone to autoimmune diseases, they're more prone to markers of health like shingles, all kinds of shifts that happen when you are shifting the way your emotional perspective and your mental perspective are focused. And so that's all a choice we make. We look out the window, we see the cold, rainy day. We make a choice what to do then in that circumstance. We decide whether they're going to be positive or negative. No one's making us do or say things that drive us toward the negative pole. So this research showing that not only will we have longer lives, we'll have healthier lives, I think should basically hopefully make people really think super hard about the choices they make, about what to say, what to think, what books to read, what movies to watch, what inputs, what websites to go on. All of these things are ways of conditioning your consciousness, and the choices you make in all those domains are going to have a dramatic effect. I mean, not just a year, but potentially a decade or even more than a decade on your health and longevity. So all of these practices are important.
I saw also on a TED talk on Facebook actually, but it was about research about longevity, and one of the major things was with people who felt supported and part of a community. And so much in our society, as people get older, they're very isolated and they don't speak to anyone. And it, we used to be very tribal, very community oriented. It was, a tribe that raised a child. And it's good to see, particularly in Australia, a lot more people are looking at eco-villages and co-housing and lifestyle villages, so that you're not living alone, that you're part of a community again. And I think that's great that, we have an EFT community in our EFTAP community. And, just last weekend we were tapping for one of our EFTAP members who isn't well, who's seriously unwell. And, there's already been a shift in her health. But I think in anything that we do, if we form a community and feel supported and part of a community, that's also very important for our well-being. And I love that you've created a wonderful community with EFT Universe and with our trainers, and we always get together and have chats like this. But it's part of also the worldwide EFT community. I know you're in connection with Nick Ortner a lot, and he's done an amazing thing with the World Tapping Summit each year, and the community that he's created as well online. So thank you for the commitment that you are to EFT in the smaller communities and the wider communities in the world. That's who you are.
Yeah, community is important, does play a role in health and longevity. And I'd say the other component of that is that if you are meditating every day and you're tuning to non-local mind, and you are then in sync with everybody else who's in sync with non-local mind, then you're never lonely, you're never alone. Like when I drive in the car, and sometimes I'll need to drive for a few hours over the course of a week, I don't turn on the radio. I just sit there, I tune into non-local mind and have just bask in this place of connection. And I take usually a 1 to 2 week retreat every couple of months and just go away, and not, it may look like I'm being alone. I'm not in the community in any obvious way, but in terms of connecting with non-local mind, you're never alone. And so those people, elderly people who for example, after a spouse dies, they often are very lonely. But if you've been meditating for many years, if you have a sense of connection with those other dimensions of being, you're never alone, you're never lonely. And in fact, you nurture those relationships by tuning into them frequently on a daily basis. So there's a rich resource there, both in terms of local community, getting people together with other human beings, and also just getting together with nature, with the universe, getting together with non-local mind in that way. And we're never bored, we're never lonely when we are hooked up in that kind of a way.
Yeah.
Dawson, I know there'd be lots of people who have heard about meditation, who have, maybe they've considered doing it, maybe they haven't. Could you just give us a really brief idea of physically how you feel when you have actually reached that altered state, or that place where you know that you are in connection with something much bigger than just the consciousness in this reality?
And
That's very good.
Just to add to that too, Dawson, like when we did level 3 with you in San Francisco many years ago in 2010, when Donna and Gary were there, and also measuring your brain states when you went into that meditation state, and how we can train our brains to go into that state. So if you want to add that in, because I know Donna and Gary are coming to Australia in October, November with their workshop.
Yes, and I just had them at one of my workshops in Hawaii, and we had people hooked up that we were measuring how people's brains changed. And your question was so perceptive, Linda, because you said, how do you feel in your body when you're in that space? And that's essentially where you need to get to. So when you're in that space in your body, you go through a phase shift. You're very relaxed. With practice, you can be heart coherent as well. Now, Roland McCready, who's the research director at HeartMath, said to me, when we hook people up to heart coherence monitors, and we then hook them up and they're heart coherent, we train them to have heart coherence, when they then meditate, they drop out of heart coherence. And that's the way it usually is. But it's possible to train yourself to remain in heart coherence while you meditate. And when you're in heart coherence, your digestive tract gets into coherence, your brain waves are in coherence, your whole metabolism is in coherence, and you feel relaxed but very alert. And when we hook people up to an EEG, what we see there's still some beta. So I wish I could share a screen with you and show you this. I have these diagrams in the book, which really illustrate this beautifully. But when we're in normal consciousness, we have a lot of our monkey mind brainwave going on, which is beta. So you have a lot of beta waves, you have a small amount of alpha, and you have theta and delta, your two slowest waves, and you have almost no gamma, your fastest wave. So what it looks like is, no gamma, a lot of beta, very little alpha, and some theta and delta over here. That's kind of the picture. I'll just do that again. I'm just trying to give you paint a picture. So from fastest to slowest. So none of the fast waves, a lot of the monkey mind beta waves, not much alpha, and then some theta and some delta. Delta is your basic carrier wave of connection with the universe. Theta is your basic wave of healing. Alpha is your basic wave of feeling good. Beta is your thinking mind, and in states of anxiety, it's your monkey mind and your stressed mind. And then gamma is this extraordinary wave which connects and coordinates brain function all across the brain. So that's where people are in normal waking consciousness. We find that when they are in this relaxed meditative state, they start to have a big flare of alpha. and their amount of beta goes down. They then start to have more theta, the healing wave, more delta, the universal connection wave, and little flashes of gamma. When you get really into that state, again, you're alert, but you're totally relaxed, you're totally focused, you're totally present. Then we see they have a lot of gamma, a little bit of beta, but not very much. Thinking brain has basically gone to sleep. They have a lot of alpha, and this alpha is bridging these fast waves of beta and gamma with these slow waves of theta and delta. You then see huge flares of theta, the healing wave, and big, big, big base of delta. So now they're in touch with the universe, the universal mind. They have these healing flares in theta, and they are still functional at the level of beta and gamma. But alpha, right in the middle, when it's too small, it's for most people, it's the conscious parts of brain function, which are beta, are cut off from the unconscious and subconscious, which are theta and delta. Alpha, when it flares out, provides a bridge between the conscious mind frequencies of beta and the subconscious mind frequencies of theta and delta. So that big alpha bridge flaring out puts the conscious mind in touch with the subconscious and unconscious minds, and then you have access and flow between all of levels of mind and these big flares of gamma, which then coordinate the whole show. So these EEG researchers like Gary and Donna are seeing these extraordinary changes in people's brain wave function. This one neuroscientist who had people hooked up at one of my recent workshops said, wow, there was so much delta, I couldn't believe how much delta people began to produce when they began to meditate. She said, I had my screen resolution set for 10 millivolts, which is usually plenty of resolution, but when they began to meditate, it flared out. I had to change the aspect ratio of my whole screen to 20 millivolts and then 40 millivolts because they're producing so much delta. And so I had people do this very simple technique called eco-meditation. And eco-meditation is just a set of physical postures and breathing exercises you do that put you in that deep state automatically. Eco-meditation requires no training, no belief, no spiritual background or structure. It's just a series of physical things you do with your body that give your body these signals to be in heart coherence, to relax deeply, to be alert, to enter the state. And just mechanically people enter this eco-meditation state, and then they feel it in their bodies. When they do it in their bodies, they have this experience in their brains. Neurotransmitters come into balance. Serotonin and dopamine balance each other out. Cortisol drops. We found in a weekend it dropped by about 30%, resting cortisol. The cortisol drops a lot. Adrenaline drops a lot. And all kinds of internal changes happen inside their bodies. So they know after practicing eco-meditation for a couple of weeks, they know what that physiological state feels like as a cocktail of neurochemicals in their brain and body. And they can very quickly reacquire that state every morning because they know what they're expecting to feel in their bodies. And so the goal is to reestablish a new set point in which they're used to feeling really good. They have lots of endorphins, they have lots of serotonin, they have appropriate amounts of dopamine, they're making lots of DHEA, all kinds of good things are happening in their bodies. They have low cortisol, they have this beautiful pattern in their brains. And then if you can get people doing that regularly, they become addicted to feeling that good, and they become really, they just don't want to have a lot of high cortisol. So if you put them in a stressful situation, they'll rescue themselves, they'll pull themselves out because you've changed their set points. So the goal there with that work in eco-meditation for me is to change people's set points so they habituate themselves to this really healthy mental, emotional, and spiritual state.
Wow, give me some of that.
I know Donna and Gary are coming out October, November. We haven't created the date yet, but it's after they've been to France with you and with Joe, and yeah, everyone can get into some of that state and get to see it also up on the computer, and yeah. Awesome.
Yeah, it's cool. What I like about the mind mirror that they use is that usually EEGs are squiggles on a screen. So you'll see a whole bunch of squiggles on a screen, which is interesting, but you have to know how to interpret it. The mind mirror is intuitive. It gives you horizontal bars. So if you have a lot of alpha, the bar gets bigger. If you have less alpha, the bar gets smaller. So it's a very intuitive way of
Very
staring
good.
at what's going on with your brain
Yeah.
and knowing if you're being effective or not.
Yeah.
And Dawson, is that training in the book, or is that something that you are creating as a separate training for people?
I created the essential formula for eco meditation in around 2008, 2009, but I've been very focused on EFT for the last 10 years to try and get EFT launched. Now that it's launched, I'm focusing much more on eco meditation, teaching that. It's in the book. It's free on the web too. It's just ecomeditation.com, and the instructions are free. There are audios there. There are amazing case histories too of people who've used it and had huge shifts in their bodies. There's some research now showing that it does things like raise immunoglobulin levels, it decreases cortisol levels, it improves brain function, and so it's just free on the web. I'm just trying to really build momentum for people, because most people think meditation is hard, and if you have to go, study in a Zen monastery for a while, it is. But if you can just sit there and there's just 7 things you have to do, 7 steps. If you just do 7 simple steps, then people are likely to incorporate it in their lifestyle if it's super simple. So I look for really the lowest common denominator. In our retreats, I do a lot more. People take a live retreat. We train them in the method, but we then have a lot of the retreat then moving to non-local mind, getting messages from non-local mind, getting physical signals from non-local mind, getting yes and no signals from non-local mind in your body, all kinds of fun, cool, amazing stuff you do. But you need that baseline to be able to enter that state, and you have to be able to do it quickly. You have to be able to sit down and in just 3, 4, 5 minutes induce the state really quickly, and not spend an hour, 2 hours before you can drop in.
I love that, Dawson, because many of the healers, I'm sure, that Jenny's associated with as well, have extended communities, and it sounds like an amazing tool to introduce to our communities, to try to, just give them that extra little bit of oomph with all the practices that they currently do.
Yeah, by all means, share it widely. I haven't been doing much with it for the last 10 years because I've been focused on EFT. But now that we're doing research, we're showing that it has really remarkable effects on the immune system and on general markers of health like resting heart rate, blood pressure, and so on. And I also wanted to make meditation easy, because I found meditation to be so hard when I was learning meditation, taking meditation classes. I could never stick with a meditation practice. But this is just so darn easy. You just do these 7 steps. I mean, one of them is relaxing your tongue. And it's a simple thing, but why is relaxing your tongue important? Well, you have a nerve in your tongue called the hypoglossal nerve, which travels to a nerve plex over here, right in the base of your skull, which then sends a signal of relaxation to the vagus nerve, which is your main nerve governing your parasympathetic nervous system, and relaxes your entire body. The vagus nerve runs to every major organ system in your body. So just relaxing your tongue, that one thing, is sending the signal to the vagus nerve. And the other pieces of eco meditation are equally simple. So you do these simple mechanical things that put you in heart coherence, then deep coherence, and the state, this beautiful brainwave state, and it's just a mechanical way of achieving what normally takes a long time to achieve. One guy who used it. He has a story on the website. He was an Iraq veteran, and he did 4 tours in Iraq, was in terrible fighting, and came back with severe PTSD. And after his discharge, he tried all kinds of things to try and help himself, and he wound up traveling to Japan and joining a Zen monastery where he learned Zen meditation. And for weeks he sat there and learned meditation, and it was rigorous, it was hard. And when he got back to the US, one day he was just doing a web search, and he came across the 7 steps of eco meditation. And he said, well, 7 steps takes 5 minutes. I can do that. So he just sat there and did all 7 steps. And he wrote us this like 2 or 3 page letter afterwards saying, I couldn't believe it. I just did these 7 simple things, and suddenly I was there. Suddenly I was there. Suddenly I was where I had been trying to get to by going to Japan, by being in the Zen monastery, by doing all these things. And it was as simple as doing these 7 steps. So it has to be simple to catch on. And that's my goal, is to make it so simple, but then to see people's lives change as well, where it can benefit them and become part of their regular practice.
And Dawson, is it simple enough to introduce to classrooms, for example?
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
And so when are you coming to Australia, Dawson?
I've been to New Zealand before with Bruce Lipton. I went there in 2009, but I've never been to Australia.
No.
Oh, come on down.
Yeah, it's on the radar, isn't it?
Yeah, I've got to do that. I did a wonderful series of workshops at a university in New Zealand, and was there for about a month. But I'm overdue to be in Australia.
You are, so put it on your radar. And of course, you've always got a bed to stay at my place, and I can show you around. You've had me at your place many times, so.
Yes. Yeah. We actually have a guest room in our new place too, Jenny. So we just finally have got settled now after 4 months. We finally, it's been really, really disruptive having, just not having a firm place to stay and so on. But finally, we were in a rental house, and we've got enough of our, like we bought pots and pans last week. We finally have pots and pans and stuff like that. So life is returning to something like normal.
Yeah, I mean, I think of your place, and then I think, oh no, it's gone now. It's like, I can't imagine how you must be thinking all the time about that thing that you had, or something that it's, oh yeah, that's right, it's gone.
I'll just run to the garage and get that. Oh no, I don't have that anymore. I don't have a garage anymore. You keep on thinking, oh, I'll just run over and grab that from the bathroom. It's like, oh no. So yeah, so it takes a while to put it all back together again. And but if you have meditation, if you have tapping, if you have a spiritual practice, you know that love never dies, love can't be burned, connection never dies. All the things that make life worth living, kindness, compassion, connection, fire can't touch them. So fire.
I think you've answered my question there, Dawson. I was going to say, has it changed your outlook on material possessions as well?
I was actually grateful for a bunch of the stuff that burned up, and one of the things that we realized is that the insurance company pays you for the stuff you had, and you then have to do an inventory for them, and you have to go buy the stuff again. And we were like, a month into this, and I said to my wife, why are we recreating the exact same inventory of stuff we had before the fire? And why is the whole thing structured to make you essentially recreate your old life? Let's be conscious about stuff. We don't need all that stuff anymore. We don't need so many goods. We don't need, like I used to have a collection of classic cars. I don't need a collection of classic cars. I just got the insurance check for that and bought myself a nice new car that starts every time.
In your 81 Fiat.
Actually, yeah, like my Fiat, which was a wonderful car, but would it start? Would it not start? Never really knew. But I've got a BMW electric car now. It starts every time. It's great, and so it makes you conscious. It makes you think and be aware of what you're doing. Make choices. Who do you want to be? What sort of life do you want to create now? And of course, we should be that way all the time. But I know I was just on autopilot in some parts of my life. So that those have all been wiped out. I now am making much more deliberate decisions and conscious ones about who I want to be, how I want to spend my time, who I spend it with, what I read, what I do with my days. And, I'm in my 60s now. We're both in our 60s, and we just think much more about, maybe we have 10 years left, maybe we have 60 more years left, but making those, you don't know how much longer you have. I mean, we came within about 2 minutes of dying in the fire, and 44 of our neighbors did die. So a lot of people did die, and then fire just moved so fast. They died in their beds, or some of them ran back to get pets or cars or things and died. Trying to retrieve possessions. And so we just want to focus on building lives that are of service and that are meaningful and that are happy and healthy. Just all the things that used to bother us and stress us out, and all the material possessions we thought were so important. It just teaches you that that's not important. That people have been loving, people have been kind. We've really focused on our values and our quality of life, our health, certainly, being vibrantly healthy, being absolutely vibrantly healthy. That is such a powerful gift. So living a conscious life, and there are people who live unconscious lives. I spend time with people sometimes who just, they're just not living a reflective life. And I think it's wonderful to live life with deliberateness and awareness of what you're doing. We don't do everything perfectly. We make mistakes, we make bad choices, but then you review what you've done, and then hopefully you get more conscious and make a better choice the next time. So living an aware life, living an awake life, living a real life, living an empowered life.
Dawson, I just want to show you this.
Is so important, and it's a choice. You've tapped away your life.
3 big words that I got from that, Dawson.
Yeah. And then that connection with both others at the local level, and then non-local mind at the transcendent level.
Dawson, I just wanted to show you this picture that my mum did just before she died, which was
called... Jenny?
Yes, can you hear me? Can you see this picture, Dawson?
I can.
That's called New Life.
Yes. Yeah, I can.
It's the new growth out of a dead, fire-burnt log. And that's where you are right now. And that was my mum's...
Oh, wow.
That was my mum's final picture. She died suddenly by a car knocking her over. So consciously, she didn't know she was about to die. However, somehow...
Wow.
And that was the only picture that she ever named. It was called New Life. And that's exactly where you are right now. Out of the fire comes new life.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I went to our property the other day, and we thought all the oak trees had been killed by the fire because they're all blackened. They had no more leaves on them. But lo and behold, the top of each oak tree, there are these little sprouts coming out. So your mom was, you're right on target there.
Yeah. Well, I just want to say thank you so much for spending the time with us, and we look forward to the time when you do come down under. But thanks for coming down under for about an hour with us right now. And on behalf of our EFTAP members, thank you so much for all the work that you do and for spending some time with us.
Linda and Jenny, I feel privileged to have had the opportunity. Thank you. And I just want to say, Jenny, you're one of those absolutely shining angels who is just such a remarkable agent for change. I've seen you do the impossible, and I've seen you keep an absolutely vibrantly positive attitude despite all kinds of setbacks. I think you're one of the most inspiring people I know in terms of the ability to maintain that. Most of us have tests and obstacles in life, and then one comes and it just overwhelms us, and we get negative. And I've seen you jump hurdle after hurdle after hurdle after hurdle, things that would have deterred and driven most people into that negative territory, and you're just relentlessly positive, and I love that about you. And that the energy you carry is now so powerful, it just inspires and uplifts everyone around you. And so whenever I think of you, when I see your face, when I see an email from you, it uplifts me, and I'm just so grateful for the service you're doing for people there and to the world. You're truly a remarkable angel. I feel so honored to associate with you.
Hear
to you, Dawson, because you were one of, when I first connected with you, I said you inspire me to be a better person and to bring more of myself out for the world. So thank you.
I'm glad you are. Yeah, Linda, it's been wonderful to get a little sense of your huge spirit and energy in this conversation too. Thank you.
Yes, Sorry, we
Thank you
couldn't
so
get
much,
your
Dawson.
picture. There's Linda.
Thank you so much. And it's just been such a delight, Dawson. Thank you very much for giving your time when we know there's so much going on in your life.
It's been a joy and a pleasure. Thank you and bless you.
Thank you.
Bye for now.